Welcome back to Quick Slants here on the OU Insider YouTube channel. Parker Thune alongside Jesse Crittenden. And Jesse, it is bizarre, is it not, that the OU softball program is just days removed from a national title, and that is far from the biggest storyline coming out of this program at the moment. The Sooners put the capstone on a 61-1 campaign, win their third consecutive championship. Jordy Bahl is named the MVP of the Women's College World Series, and 4 days later, she's in the transfer portal. What a bizarre week it has been for OU softball.
Yeah, I think if you would have told me, I was going to say a year ago, but let's say 2 weeks ago that this was going to happen, I don't think I would have believed it. Now, I will say I think there were some rumblings, and I think that the team certainly hinted at how tough this year was for a lot of different reasons. But I mean, I think what has been most crazy is this season truly was historic. To do what OU did, to end the season on 53 straight wins, to obliterate the previous record for consecutive wins, to dominate like they did at the Women's College World Series, for Jordy to dominate like she did. I mean, that was genuinely one of the most impressive runs by any player in the Women's College World Series ever. And then 4 days later, she's gone. You don't typically see this kind of instability, or maybe instability is too strong of a word, but you don't typically see this not only from a Patty Gasso team, but from a team who just won their third straight title less than a week ago.
You want to talk about the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. Win a championship and then get victimized by arguably the most impactful transfer in the history of the sport. That's what OU has been through over the last several days. And Jordy Bahl was a phenomenal representative for the university, obviously electric in the circle. And what she did in the 2023 Women's College World Series will always have a spot in Sooner lore. There are many reasons why players enter the transfer portal across all sports. It does feel like if there's the right reason to enter the transfer portal, that's the reason Jordy Bahl has. So definitely not someone that any rational Sooner fan is going to wring their hands over, because I think they realize that as good as she is and as much of a lift as she provided to this program, she's got a life. She's the one that's got to live it. And the statement that she put out was so thorough, so comprehensive, and really laid out and left no ambiguities as to why she's made the decision that she's made, as stunning of a decision as it might be to the casual observer. All of that said, Jesse, you look ahead to next season for OU. And I guess first I want to ask you this. Take Jordy Bahl away from this team in 2023. Where do you think the Sooners sit nationally? And obviously with Jordy Bahl set to depart the program before the 2024 season, where do you slot Oklahoma amongst the ranks of the elite in the sport for 2024?
Yeah, I think two things to answer your question. One, there is no reason to think that OU shouldn't be at the top of national title candidates next year, even with Jordy Bahl's departure. I think two things can be true on that. Jordy Bahl was incredibly impactful and had a significant impact on the team, and OU should be able to rebound from her absence. Just look at the team and the amount of players that are coming back. So many high impact players like Tiare Jennings and Jada Coleman and Alyssa Brito and Kinsey Hansen and Sydney Sanders. I mean, you go through the list. I mean, Nicole May. You look at the list of players that are coming back. OU has had an abundance of riches for a long time. That's not going to change with Jordy Bahl's absence. However, I do think there is going to have to be some time will tell kind of factor here in terms of where OU sits, because now I think what Jordy Bahl's departure does do, not just how big of an impact she had, but I think now the biggest thing is there is kind of a question mark on OU's pitching staff going into next season. Alex Duraco's gone. Now Jordy Bahl's gone. It's not to say there's not talent there. Nicole May had a really, really good season. I mean, she finished top 5 in ERA. Kirsten Deal, the freshman this past season, didn't play a ton, but she did show some real signs, including in the postseason. I think the team is really excited about her, but I do think Patty is going to need to add some pitching depth. I think that's going to be a huge factor now, not only just because Jordy Bahl had that much of an impact, but we've seen just this year, she gave Alex Storako, Nicole May, and Jordy Bahl basically even opportunities throughout the season. That's the way she wants to play. And she really only played Jordy Bahl as much as she did down the stretch because Jordy was that good. I don't think that's Patty's preference. So I think not only to fit within Patty's scheme, but also just to increase that depth. I do think that is a slight question mark. So all that being said, I think OU should still be a favorite heading into next season, but I do think what they do this offseason is going to be very important.
And we do know that Patty Gasso is the queen of the transfer portal. And if you paid attention to the interviews that Alex Storako did after choosing Oklahoma as her transfer destination last offseason, I would imagine there are plenty of players out there that share her sentiment that going to Oklahoma is essentially a no-brainer because you're going to get the opportunity to play for a championship. Ultimately, that's the situation that Storako got placed in her final collegiate start, and she got the opportunity to be in the circle and be the pitcher of record in a game that decided the series and gave Oklahoma its third consecutive title. So looking ahead, you not just have to not only do you have to replace Jordy Bahl, you've also got to replace Grace Lyons. You've got to replace Storako herself, as you mentioned. So 2 of your 3 dominant pitching arms, you have to find plug and play replacements for. You also have to fill the massive shoes of one of the best shortstops and maybe the best shortstop in college softball. So how confident in an overall sense do you feel that this Oklahoma softball team is going to stay, not necessarily on the level that they were this year, Jesse, because they had the best season in the history of the sport, but on a championship front runner type of level?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what we saw actually this year across the landscape is as dominant as OU was, they certainly got tested. Stanford gave OU everything they could handle. I think Stanford is probably telling themselves if a couple other balls bounce their way, maybe they get one of those games in the Women's College World Series. Clemson had OU on the ropes. They were up 7-4 in the Super Regional Game 2. Even Florida State. I think Florida State really challenged OU in the championship series. If Jada Coleman doesn't have one of the most spectacular grabs in the outfield again in that Game 2, Florida State, could take a commanding lead. So all that being said, I think OU should certainly be the favorite again heading into next year, despite all the departures that you just laid out. They should still be the favorite, I think. But yeah, they've got some holes to fill, not only for 1 and 2, again, like I talked about, they've got to address their pitching depth. But I think the college softball landscape is starting to get better. I think there's more parity, and I think you saw OU get tested. So I think all that being said, it's certainly not a guarantee. I think OU does actually have some work to do. And and it's so hard to win 1 title, let alone 2 or 3. And next year they're going for 4. So this is a tough task ahead of them. I do think they should be really, really good in the inner circle of title contenders. They've got some work to do.
You feel like Jordy Bahl is the type of player you can replace 1 for 1? Like you take her out of the picture. Do you need to find to kind of steal an analogy from the movie Moneyball? Do you have to recreate her with a conglomerate of players, or do you think there is a transfer, whether realistic or not, out there, or that will be out there, that could fill Jordy Bahl's shoes in their entirety?
I'm really happy you mentioned Moneyball. I love that movie. It's a big reason why I'm an Ace fan, even though it's really tough being an Ace fan right now. I think I can be confident in telling you this. Patty Gasso is not going out looking to replace Jordy Bahl 1 for 1. I think that's a losing proposition before you even get started. Now, are there pitchers out there who are really good? We saw Nyjah Kennedy, who I think is going to be a name we're going to hear a lot over the next few weeks. She was incredible for Stanford, incredible pitcher. Valerie Cagle at Clemson. Jordy Bahl is not the only incredible pitcher in the country. She wasn't the only incredible pitcher on the team. However, what we just saw Jordy Bahl do in the Women's College World Series, I don't know if there's anybody else, including Nyjah Kennedy, who could have that type of impact. So I think if you are starting from how do we get 1 player to replace Jordy, I think that's a losing proposition. However, this staff is just as Jennifer Rocha and Patty Gasso and this coaching staff are as good as anybody at developing pitching depth. I would be surprised if OU doesn't go out and find at least a couple of different players to add to this staff. Again, Patty really likes to use multiple pitchers. That's really how she's been the last few years. I think we're going to see that, and I think we're going to see more about adding depth and less about trying to get the ultimate pitcher to replace Jordy.
One more for you here, Jesse, because let me play devil's advocate here, just for the sake of the hypothetical. Let's say Oklahoma doesn't make a splashy ad on their pitching staff via the transfer portal. How confident are you in not only Kirsten Deal, but also S.J. Guerin, that even if you don't make a huge addition via the portal like Alex Storako was a year ago, that you can still have a dominant pitching staff top to bottom with multiple contributors that you can trust to give you shutdown innings?
I would still be reasonably confident. Nicole May, again, I think it's easy to forget because she didn't see the field a lot during the Women's College World Series. Nicole May was incredible this year. She's going to be a senior next year. I think that's incredibly important. So I think with that said, and assuming there's not a splash that's made, I think you would go into next year with Nicole May as your starting pitcher, which, look, a billion other schools in the country would love to have somebody as good as Nicole May. So I think that's not a bad thing. Kirsten Deal, again, made some strides last year. You mentioned S.J. Guerin. I think the team is excited about her, but I think she's still pretty raw and needs to develop. So to answer your original question, how confident? I would still be pretty confident they could be an elite pitching staff next year, but I think you would be in a position to be relying a lot on internal development. You would really need Kirsten Deal to make another step. You would need S.J. Guerin to not only see the field, which she didn't really this past year, but make an impact right away. So I think you would be counting on things that aren't impossible, but you would be counting on several things to make up an elite pitching staff.
You want to talk about a dynasty? There isn't one across the entire landscape of college sports right now that can hold a candle to Patty Gasso and the Oklahoma Sooner softball program as they look ahead to 2024 and an opportunity to claim their 4th consecutive national title and their 8th of the 21st century. That's all for this installment of Quick Slants. That is Jesse Crittenden. I am Parker Thune. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and head to OUinsider.com, where right now you can sign up free until the start of the Sooners fall camp, obviously in the sport of football as opposed to softball. But you can sign up free at OUinsider.com, get 2 months of free access leading into August fall camp. We will hope to see you on that side. We will certainly see you again here on this channel. Take care.